What if the foundation of Western democracy was actually laid by Islamic scholars over 1,000 years before the American Constitution? What if the rights we love and cherish were enshrined into Islamic law? What if the concept of separation of church and state isn't foreign but redundant as it pertains to Islamic law? 622 CE. The Quran declares, La ikraha fil din, no compulsion in religion. This wasn't just theology, it was constitutional law. The Constitution of Medina in 622 CE established revolutionary precedents, to each their own religion while creating shared civic duties. Jews, Muslims, and pagan became one ummah, meaning one nation for civic purposes while maintaining separate religious practices. This was separation of church and state 1,000 years before Western concepts. Here's where it gets brilliant. Muslims paid zakat, a religious obligation, but non-Muslims paid equivalent secular taxes, achieving identical public outcomes. Same public services, same infrastructure, but religious obligations converted to secular equivalents. This was constitutional accommodation centuries before America existed. Islamic scholars understood psychology 800 years before Bandura's experiments. Al-Ghazali recognized social learning, how behavior spread through communities by observation. They designed laws to prevent negative behavior modeling, anticipating modern behavioral science by centuries. The Fourth Amendment protections you think are American, they're Islamic. 7th century Quranic verses prohibited entering homes without consent and forbade spying. Islamic law required 4 witnesses for serious crimes, effectively decriminalizing private behavior while maintaining public order, since 4 people is defined as a mass, in other words public. The murder at Khaybar established due process 1,000 years before Western law. When Abdullah ibn Sahl was found dead with no evidence, communities demanded justice. Prophet Muhammad demanded proof, established burden of evidence on accusers, and when proof failed, paid compensation himself rather than convict based on suspicion. How did Islamic law reach the West? Through documented transmission via Norman Sicily, Al-Andalus, and medieval universities. Professor John Makdisi's research proves English common law institutions derived directly from Islamic legal innovations through Henry II's reforms. English action of debt from Islamic AQD, trial by jury from Islamic witness procedures, trust law from Islamic Waquf institutions during the Crusades. The 12-person jury system replaced European trial by combat with rational Islamic legal reasoning. You heard it right, trial by combat, and let's not forget trial by water. If you sink and drown, you are not the witch. The witch hunt continues. Today, Islamic finance is a $4.5 trillion global industry. London became the 3rd largest venue for Islamic bonds. The UK became the first non-Muslim country to issue sovereign Islamic bonds. Secular governments adopting Islamic institutional frameworks, and it's working. Akhawat Pakistan. 567,000 active borrowers using interest-free Islamic loans. The UNHCR Refugee Zakat Fund. 100% contribution delivery through Islamic humanitarian networks. Islamic institutions achieving social outcomes that secular systems struggle to match. While Western systems required external separation to protect religious freedom, Islamic law achieved the same outcomes through internal theological constraints, no compulsion in religion, secular tax equivalents, privacy protections, due process procedures, all embedded within the religious framework itself. The constitutional protections Americans consider uniquely Western, religious freedom, privacy rights, due process, separation of powers, were pioneered by Islamic scholars. The Founding Fathers were more often than not knowingly implementing Islamic institutional innovations transmitted through centuries of scholarly exchange. Understanding Islamic constitutional innovations provides models for modern challenges, governing diverse religious populations while protecting individual rights. Rather than requiring complete separation, these frameworks show how religious authenticity and secular governance can coexist productively. This research demands substantial revision of constitutional history education to accurately reflect Islamic contributions to Western legal development. For too long, constitutional law has been taught as exclusively Western innovation when the evidence shows extensive Islamic origins. This reveals that effective governance and individual protection aren't dependent on any single approach, but can be achieved through various mechanisms respecting human dignity. Islamic law demonstrates that religious and secular governance can achieve similar protective outcomes through different structural mechanisms. The next time you hear a state is passing creeping Sharia laws, and Islamophobes arguing Islam isn't compatible with white European cultural identity. Remember, the principles protecting your religious freedom were first developed by Islamic scholars who understood that true faith must be free. Sometimes the most important constitutional protections come from the places you least expect.